to the Weekend Eve. I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice, and this is Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Across from me is my brother with another mother and the co-host of this phenomenal show, Darwin Penny. How are you doing, Coach 24?
Doing great, Voice. We're just glad to be here again and looking forward to another great and awesome show.
Exactly. And behind the scenes is Mr. DJ Scatter, George Walker. Mr. Walker, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing super fantastic this evening.
All right, that sounds great. So let's get into this. We got some baseball going right now. We'll go ahead and discuss that because there is a lot of football that we need to talk about. I guess earlier, Houston took care of the Mariners, so now the Mariners are up 2-0.
Astros are up 2-0.
Or I'm sorry, the Astros are up 2-0 on the Mariners. And so anyway, yeah, I keep hearing myself now. I see the Astros just taking care of business and taking them out. And right now, the only thing the Yankees have to deal with is the rain, because right now they've handled the Mariner or the Indians or the Guardians.
You guys coming in that one here? What's that else playing?
I have multiple voices inside my head. You know how they talk about you have your voices inside your head? Well, I am definitely having a bunch of voices in my head right now. And they are just rattling 100,000 miles. Ooh, oh my gosh. They left. So anyway, so let's get back. Astros took care of Mariners. They're up 2-0. And this is the best of 5, so I see them going to Seattle, taking care of business. I see a sweep, and they'll sit and wait for the Yankee Guardian matchup. Now, they had Quattro pitching for Cleveland, and he has not pitched well against the Yankees, but they still threw him out there, and the Yankees took care of business. Saying that, do you see Cleveland right now coming back and taking care of business?
Well, the thing that Cleveland has to do is to try to even this series up before they get back home. The thing that has been interesting for me in watching this short series, because when we look at Major League Baseball, it's a long year. It's 162 games over about 180 days. And so managers manage one way, particularly throughout the year, but then all of a sudden in the playoffs, they want to change the way that they've managed, and the gut feelings go away, and you find yourselves in situations where we're pulling pitchers too soon, where the starter is going really well and they start out thinking themselves. And I think that's one of the things that Cleveland has to be careful of, because the Yankees are going to live and die by the home run. And so in a short series, you could be exposed by another team just coming in and playing small ball and putting some pressure on them, using their running game and trying to control them, and forcing those guys to hit the ball the other way from a pitching staff standpoint, and just playing solid defense. So one of the things that I've noticed in a couple of the games, key errors have led to innings moving momentum for the other team. Even in the Dodgers game last night, Clear, and then all of a sudden the Padres get hot and get going, and the game changes. And so Cleveland has to rely on who they are, and that's a team that they're going to have to move and hit behind runners. They're going to have to use the whole field, play good defense, solid pitching, and their bullpen is going to have to come up big. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to say, we're not going to let Aaron Judge beat us.
Yep, absolutely. And a lot of times you get a pitcher that wants to challenge that Aaron Judge person. Not necessarily Aaron Judge, but when you have their best player or best hitter up there, you want to try to challenge him. You need to, I mean, you've got it now where you can just point to him and say, hey, give him first base. You don't even have to throw the 4 balls, or as Don Drysdale said, he just drilled a guy that saved 4 pitches. So, but yeah, you need to do that. Saying that, Cleveland needs to get back to their pitching that led them this last part of the season, playing arguably the best baseball in the major leagues. And so they just need to focus on that. And what you're saying, hopefully Terry Francona does what we would call the Marty Schottenheimer. He does regular season and then the playoffs come and he does totally different. But Terry has a World Series with Boston, so you would think that he is experienced enough and has the advantage to do all that. So, but
I think it's, again, I want to get back to playing their game. They only had 2 guys in their lineup this year that had 20 home runs.
One was Ramirez.
Right. Ramirez had 20 and Josh Naylor had 20. Ramirez had 29. So here you are a team that you don't rely on the home run, and so trying to play for it. Now, it was a huge home run that sent them to this series, but that's not who they are as a team, and I think that's really, really important, that they don't try to play for the big inning, but they try to scratch for a run each inning and then allow their pitching to do what it does best, and go out and play good, solid defense, right? They are a team in every sense. No big superstars, right? Their biggest guy is now playing for the Mets.
Right.
Right. So you don't have all these big guys. You don't have Kluber and all those guys that you had. It's a new Guardians, just as much as their name changing from Indians to Guardians. They're in a better position. So they only had one guy that won 15 games, but they had 3 guys that were double-digit wins for them in their rotation. And so we want to do a very good job of just going out and being a team, because as individuals, as star powers, they don't have what the Yankees have.
Right.
And I believe that that's the way they've got to approach this series.
Absolutely. So since the game is not playing tonight, now they'll have game 2 tomorrow, I believe. And I have not seen where game 3 is, because game 3 will be in Cleveland. But going to the National League, you've got Atlanta finally putting it together. Starting pitcher, and I can't think of his name right off the bat, but he pitched very well. He pitched 7 innings and 6 strikeouts, and just really shut down the Phillies' offensive lineup. So going back, but now they have to go to Philly and take care of business. I think they are. I think they can do. I think they can do that. I've never really been confident with the Phillies. So.
Yeah, well, the Phillies are kind of going in playing with house money, kind of as an underdog. Certainly, Max Fried does a great job of kind of heading up that Brave staff, and Wright, and then you have an experienced guy in Charlie Morton, who's been in World Series action before with Tampa, and so and with Houston. So their pitching staff can play really well. They had a young group of stars as far as their everyday position players. Everybody always knows about Acuna. Acuna, has been basically prophesied that he was going to be a great level player. He has, minus the injury. He's played really well. But one of the guys that was key was a young man by the name of Michael Harris. Michael Harris came up and played center field for them late in the about a quarter of the way into the season. He wound up starting about 100+ games for them, and just did an outstanding job for them. Hit almost 300, and just really solidified them defensively. Albies. Really solid player. Dansby Swanson at shortstop, really solid player. And so they've got some guys that are young and on the rise. Their outfielders are all pretty young. 21 to 24 years old. They got one older guy out there, but they don't have a guy in their start. They got one guy over 30 in their starting lineup. So the Braves are on the way up.
Absolutely.
Moving there. So I think it's going to be a really good series there. The unsung guy for the Phillies that has to step up is Bryce Harper. He's quietly, and that's hard to say about Bryce Harper, that he's quietly had another solid year. He's played through some injuries this year. He hadn't been 100%, but he's played. But if his back gets going, he could really turn this thing in the Phillies' favor. And I don't think they're just going to go away. They totally surprised me in the St. Louis series, but the St. Louis series really shifted in one inning where all of a sudden St. Louis's closer couldn't throw strikes, couldn't command his fastball,
Right.
and they go in with a 3-run lead. Next thing you know, they're walking out they're down 3, and it shifted the whole series.
Absolutely.
And then certainly St. Louis's big bats did not hit. Their 3, 4, 5 guys. Goldschmidt's been lights out all year, and those guys did not hit in that short series.
Oh, absolutely. Now Acuna got injured last night. He got hit by a pitch. I had not heard on his outcome for tomorrow's game in Philadelphia. Have you heard anything on that?
They're keeping it close lip and just say it's day to day.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I believe he'll play. Things will line up for him, and they'll figure out a way to go. This is win or go home. So those guys will figure out a way how to get back out there. So
Well, I will definitely say if Acuna does not play, it will really hinder the Braves, and the Phillies have a great shot at advancing to the next round, which was the NL Championship. Now you've got the Padres and the Dodgers, and my Padres won last night. Yu Darvish went 7 innings and was just lights out. And then they took him out, and all of a sudden I was having a heart attack because I was like, oh, no, these guys are going to come back. And the Dodgers did for just a little bit, but then the Padres scored a bonus run in the insurance run in the 9th inning, and then their closer took care of business. So I really feel positive about the Padres going. Now, saying that, I think they have to finish them off in San Diego, which will be the first time in 15 years that San Diego will have a home game or have a playoff game in San Diego. So I know the crowd is just really going to be electric out there.
absolutely, it was a really good game last night. A couple of well-hit balls, I might add, in that last inning with the tying run at the plate. Guy comes up and hits one all the way to the warning track, and then the last ball was just a line shot right at the right fielder. Soto had a good night last night. I thought that was really the key to San Diego's offense, is that everybody's talked about how would he respond. Obviously he had a great series as a young player with the Nationals a couple of years ago, and now here he is back in the postseason, and that was the reason why the Padres went to get him, is for right now. And so I'll say this, even when he's gotten out, they've been hard hit outs, and so he's swinging the bat really well right now. He's not chasing any pitches, outside of the zone, and he looks pretty locked in. And so I think he's poised to have a big series. I think that'll be the key for San Diego, as well as one of their unsung heroes who's been a little bit nicked up all year, Will Myers, who was one of our prospects here in Kansas City. And, he's been nicked up, but he's starting to look like he's ready to swing the bat. The Dodgers are going to go as far as I believe that their pitching takes them, their starting pitching. And so, Kershaw wasn't bad last night, but he wasn't elite. They had good pitching the previous night when they won, and so I think this is going to be a full series. And but I still think in the end the Dodgers are probably going to pull it out.
I know, but I am not feeling that way. I really feel strong for the Padres, so I'm gonna stick with the Padres. Go, come on, San Diego, let's go do it. So anyway, so we've got our baseball lineup going, and where they're at and everything. So let's turn our focus to the NFL, where Monday Night Football had a great game. The Chiefs and the Raiders, and even though it's still a great series, it's not a rivalry like it used to be. I mean, my first game, which was in 1974, was the Oakland Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was just phenomenal. Saying that, it's not as great as it is because Andy Reid is 15-3 against them. But the officials are trying. The best officiating crew is the ones that are invisible. They make the calls, but you don't see them or you don't hear them. And then you have the one play where Chris Jones lands on Derek Carr, and he actually had the ball on him, and they called the penalty. How do you feel about that penalty? Because it was frustrating me.
Well, all of the penalties right now when it comes to quarterback safety, player safety, has those who are mature in age as we are, holding our hands in our heads trying to say it's football. And a lot of the penalties that are called, even for taunting and everything else, you're saying these things didn't used to be penalties, and now they're penalties. Players are trying to figure out how to play the game, especially if you're a veteran player. You've come up a little bit different, and so it's making it very, very difficult. The hard part for us as the fan is when we see it, most of the time it's at a speed much slower than what the official is seeing in the game, and it happens so fast. And they maybe think they see something, but they really don't. And then we look at it and we're going, what did you see? And so I think there's a challenge for those guys to protect the players, and sometimes they're going overboard with it. I would liken it to a referee in a boxing match. He'd rather be on the side of I stepped in too soon than step in too late.
Right.
I think everybody's worried about if something happens to a player, am I going to be blamed for it?
Right.
Because that's the society, unfortunately, that we live in today, is somebody has to carry the blame. And now the blame is usually financial blame.
Right.
Because of somebody's career or whatever, because you didn't do your job. And I think it's put the guys on edge, and I think consequently they've made worse calls than they would if they were just going out and just officiating the game. That's always the hope. And I'll say this, I used to say it as a high school coach, and I probably shouldn't be proud of it or anything like that, but I used to remind officials, they didn't come to see me coach, nor did they come to see you officiate.
Right.
They came to see the players play.
Right.
Let them play.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think possibly that the officials were not in the right position, or they were positioned wrong to see plays like this? Do they need to adjust how they look at a game?
Absolutely. I don't think so. As far as where they start at, I don't think they're in the wrong position. I think they've done a good job at looking at where you're supposed to start the play. But many times the game is going really, really fast, and I think these guys are trying to get out of the way so that they don't get injured. I saw an official the other day, the back judge, in a position that he he couldn't move. He had moved in the wrong way, and now here comes the freight train, and he got knocked down, but he didn't get injured.
Right.
And so I think that plays a huge part in it. I don't want to be in the wrong place, but I think officials have to do like players. You can't play not to lose. You can't play afraid. And I think as an official, you can't be afraid to make the wrong call. And I think you have to go out there and just do the very best that you can. But here's what I know, and I really say this, especially at the amateur level, we can't play without these people.
That's true.
Right? And these guys and ladies that are now officiating games have families, they have regular jobs, and they go out and try to do the best they can. And we all have a sideline view.
Right.
And it makes it very, very difficult. Very few times does one call affect the game.
Right.
When we go back and check the whole record of the game. The question is, at what point in the game does it happen?
Right.
And so, but there's going to be more calls like these because they have been given a charge to protect the players. And so they're going to err on the side of safety over that. There's a really good video out there with Kevin Hart and the guys from the NFL from the NFL Network crew, and they're saying this is Tom Brady being sacked, and they're about to put him down, and he's like, no, I got to have something to lay on. And then I need a blanket. Cover me up. I'm cold. And they're
a pillow.
And they're making, I need somebody to read me a story. And so they're making a mockery of it. It is what it is, but the old days of just going in and clobbering quarterbacks and coming in low and hitting quarterbacks' knees, those days are over.
Yeah.
Those days are over, it's every time a flag goes down, there's half of the stadium that doesn't like it, and there's another half that does like it, right? And we have to be like that, because I tell all the Chiefs fans, if that call was reversed where it was Mahomes back there,
right,
everybody would be clapping their hands. Yeah, they were trying to take his head off.
Yep, so absolutely.
Let's just hope that they continue to work to get better. They're all graded, and if they don't achieve a certain level, then they're not in the NFL anymore. And so those men and women have to earn their way, and let's give them the opportunity to continue to grow and get better in the game. And they have instant replay and all of these things. And I think any good official is going to say when he misses a call, he missed it. And that was kind of one of the hard things for me. With this particular call with Brady, the one official defended it. He defended his call. Right.
Boger.
Yeah. And I'm just like, you might want to rethink how you say that.
Yeah, because that one, I mean, I could see Derek Carr. I can see that one and accept that one. But the one with Tom Brady, that was just totally. I mean, I could see if the defensive guy threw him and he started rolling away, but he didn't. He virtually just rolled over.
Right.
I mean, you do that. You probably do that a little bit harder, with a husband and wife in bed than he did with Tom Brady. but they call that. Now, saying that, I'll give these officials credit. I mean, they have a difficult job, and nobody likes them. Even when they don't make a call, they're not liked, and then when they make a call, they're not liked. But I always tell people, look, can you do better? Go out there and try to do it. And try to do it when you've got two sets of teams yelling at you, and then you've got 80,000 people yelling at you and telling you whether you're right or wrong, and all the time. So I totally get what they're saying, and but I think the problem is going to be, because that play could have cost the Chiefs a game. Mm-hmm. But put it into a playoff situation or even a Super Bowl situation, and that would cost them a team, not necessarily the Chiefs, but any team. And it costs them a Super Bowl championship or a chance to go to the Super Bowl, then they have to start thinking, okay, we do need to start making changes. I just don't think that they need to make changes. I just think they just need to be in better positions.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so we are at the beginning and we are close to halftime. So we're going to go ahead and take our break. And then when we come back, we will talk about two of the biggest games this weekend. And one question I will ask, is this game the game of the year? So I am Brian Cressy, Awesome Voice, Coach 24, Darwin Penny, DJ Scatter, George Walker, and we are Any Given Sunday on KUAW. For Darwin Penny and Mr. DJ Scatter, George Walker running the controls. We were talking football. We were talking about some of the games and stuff. This weekend, there are going to be some really good games. There are two that are by far the top two games of the weekend. And one will be played Sunday night, and the other one will be played at 3:25. So, and as I was telling you, is the Buffalo Bills Kansas City Chiefs game the game of the year?
It is the game of the year thus far, right? Obviously, the game of the year for me changes week to week,
Gotcha.
depending on who needs a win back. But the Chiefs have been the class of the AFC for the last 4 years. And so Buffalo was very close last year in an all-time epic shootout. They've been knocking on the door. If you remember years back in the 80s, Bum Phillips and his Oilers were trying to surpass the Steelers, not only for divisional supremacy, but AFC supremacy as well. And he said, we knocked on the door last year, then we kicked on the door this year. Next year, we're going to knock the whole damn door down.
Yep.
And I think that's where Buffalo feels like they are, because think about it, 3 years ago at what the gap was between the two teams. It was a sizable gap. And Buffalo has closed that gap, and in some people's eyes, have surpassed the Chiefs. But until they do it in the playoffs and until they go to a Super Bowl, most people are still going to say, well, the Chiefs are the team to beat. I've got Nick Wright says it like this. He calls the AFC Championship game now the Kansas City Invitational.
Yeah,
because they've hosted the AFC Championship game every year at home. Most people thought that was the AFC Championship game last year when the Chiefs and Buffalo played, and then lo and behold, the Bengals come into town and upset the mighty Chiefs. And so I think that is the game right now for just to say the Chiefs need the respect as being the top dog. Most people look at last year's Bengals game as a fluke, right? And they want to supplant again themselves as we're still the Chiefs. We haven't gone anywhere. We haven't dropped off. And then Buffalo is saying it's our time. Okay, don't worry about San Diego. Don't worry about anybody else. We're the team that you need to be looking at. And it's interesting because both of them have losses this year that nobody saw coming.
right.
Nobody saw Miami beating Buffalo, and nobody certainly saw Indianapolis beating the Chiefs.
And in the style that they got beaten in.
Absolutely.
So saying that, which win for either team is more important, Kansas City or Buffalo?
I believe it's Buffalo because in their mind, they're still seeing that divisional playoff game last year that they thought, man, we're 30 seconds away from putting this thing away and moving on, because they're saying this year's their time, but they really thought it was last year.
Right.
You know, they thought they had come because they had the regular season game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so they felt like this was their time. And so I think they have the most to prove. Kansas City has had so much playoff success over the last 4 years that I don't think they have as much to prove by this game or to gain. Buffalo has the most to gain, but the Chiefs have probably the most to lose. And that is this going to say, okay, there's a chink in their armor. They're not who they've been in the past, and make everybody feel like they can come into town. I mean, the game the other night, the call and all of that, but that game could have gone either way with some better kicking.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So, and then I thought the Raiders made a poor decision in not just kicking the extra point and let's take our chances in overtime.
Right.
And so, but by the same token, I could say that about Andy Reid going for 2 there, just get the 1 point and you've got an 8-point lead.
I think he was so angry at that kicker for missing the field goal that he was like, I'm not going to put it in his hands.
Right. You, do I put it in the hands of my kicker or do I put it in the hands of 15?
Right.
And he's going to take 15 every time.
Every time. I totally agree with you. I think this is Buffalo. This win will be, or this game is more important to Buffalo, because if Buffalo loses, then the chances of them going onto the road, possibly to Kansas City, in order to go to the Super Bowl, and that will bear. I mean, after a while, it's a mental block. I mean, you have to face it, because as the media is today, they're going to ask every question. Can you win in Kansas City? Can you win in Kansas City? Can you win? Because they have not done it yet. Mm-hmm. They won last year during the regular season. Well, the regular season doesn't mean as much, but they have something to prove. And yes, the Chiefs have something to prove, and they got to keep going. But if Buffalo has to play on the road again, and especially against Kansas City, I just don't see Buffalo doing it. I see Kansas City following through and making it through. So that's why I say that Buffalo needs to win this game. And so Sunday, when I do my predictions, you guys listen, and we will let you guys know who we pick for Sunday's game. So now, the other game, which is just as equally as competitive and as great of the weekend, you've got Dallas going 4-1, going to Philadelphia, to the only undefeated team in the NFL, and playing a game for first place in the NFC Beast. And I know that you've been tired of me calling it NFC Least and all that, but they are the NFC Beast this year, and the two best teams in the NFC are playing each other. Now you have Rush, Cooper Rush as the quarterback. They're not going to play Dak this week, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. But saying that, give us a synopsis of this game.
Well, certainly it is Philadelphia's offense that has been really, really good over the first 5 weeks of the season versus Dallas's defense, which has been really, really good over the first 5 weeks of the season, and who can impart their will on the other team. Certainly with it being on the road at Philadelphia, most people are calling them the favorite and Dallas the underdog. Mike McCarthy last week said we're not anybody's underdog, and then he backed it up. You know, they go out and beat the Rams, and so it's going to come down to the decision making. The last time that the Eagles played in Dallas, Jalen Hurts didn't play particularly well. They picked him a couple times. Trayvon Diggs had a pick six against him that really put Dallas out in front of him. Last year Dallas beat them really, really soundly twice. Beat them by 20 one game, and then beat them by almost 30 the second time they played them. And it really wasn't that close. And so they've got a lot to prove that, no, we're the team to beat. You're not. You've had your turn last year. It's our turn. The NFC East has not had a repeat champion since 2004, which is really incredible.
And who was the head coach at that time?
For
the team that won it back to back?
It was Andy Reid. Andy Reid was the Eagle, and they had won like 3 straight.
Mm-hmm.
And especially you go back to the 90s, Dallas won like 6 straight.
Right.
NFC. So, but I think there is a challenge for both teams to go out there. But I think right now the pressure is on the Eagles. They're playing at home. You're undefeated. You're trying to say we are not only the best in the East, they're trying to say that they're the best in football right now because they're undefeated.
Yep.
And so most people are still saying, yeah, but we really don't. You hadn't really beat anybody. Don't really trust you. And so they're looking for that. Jalen Hurts is trying to prove that he's an all-around quarterback and not just a running quarterback. He's trying to shake that label. And then the whole Cooper Rush Dak thing, which for me is not an issue. The rule is always, if you feel good today, you'll feel even better tomorrow. And I think Dallas is doing the right thing by not playing or not starting Dak this week, even though he's throwing the ball. Some of the receivers are saying that he's got some zip on the ball and it looks good. And so we'll be like that. I think the right thing to do is not because I think Cooper Rush is better, but to make sure that thumb is completely healed, because it's so easy to go out and re-break that thing when it's not 100%. When they started out, it was a 6 to 8 week process. Well, you're only at week 5 now. There's for me no reason to hurry him back. It's a long season. If you fall 2 games behind the Eagles right now, it's not the end of the world. Because they're not going to go undefeated, and then you're going to get them again later in the season. And so it's just a matter of them going out. But in the end, believe it or not, I think the Cowboys are going to prevail.
Cool.
I think their defense is that good.
So Mike McCarthy has been really chastised the past couple of years and even this year, and people are starting to light up on him. Are you one of those people?
No. I just think he hadn't been placed in a difficult situation as far as clock management. Those are the things that made people question his ability. I gave him a pass in 2020. Your quarterback was hurt.
Right.
In 2020, right? So Dak broke his ankle. He was out. You didn't have your quarterback. You were running retreads and everybody else out there. Can't blame that on you. Last year you had your quarterback, right? You win 12 games, right? But it was crucial losses and poor clock management and timeouts and challenges that questioned not his overall philosophy, but his game management skills. And so for me, the jury's still out on his game management skills. I think he has navigated the waters well this year as far as making sure that the team is ready to play. You haven't seen them come out flat this year except for week one. They were flat week one, but every other week since then he's rallied the troops. And so we're going to see that. But quietly, I think the biggest thing is these guys having another year in the defense and with Dan Quinn. And Micah Parsons says it best. He says, wherever this guy goes, that's where I go, because he has those guys selling out on defense, and they believe it. That is a fast and electric defense, and they're doing a great job. The offense has done enough. But when you go out and the defense gives up 19, 16, 17, 13, and 10 points, you don't have to do too much.
Absolutely. So sticking with the NFC, Matt Rule is gone. Steve Wilkes has taken over as the intern head coach. I think it's a great opportunity for him as a and I hate saying it like this, but we have to because of the way it is. He is a black coach. He is getting the opportunity. But at the same time, he is in a no-win situation with this. Now, you see it from another point. And what do you see with that, with the Matt Rule firing?
Well, for me, who in 2017 was 1-11 in college football, and then in 2020 is a head NFL coach? How do you go from 1-11 to 7-6 to 11-3 with no NFL background and become a head coach? Well, he was a line coach for Buffalo for 2 years.
Okay, so
he's never been a coordinator.
Right.
He had been away from the NFL for 20 years.
Right.
For me, that was an insult to every NFL coordinator, the Eric Bieniemys, the Byron Leftwiches. I'll even go as far as say Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
That these guys were more qualified to get that position than he was. Right now, the NFL, what we would say is that the Rooney Rule is not very good.
No.
It is on paper good, so that there has to be a minority candidate, but I can't make you hire anybody. I can't put you in a position where you say people are going to hire who they're comfortable with. And now with this offensive explosion, OCs are getting the head coaching job.
Right.
Whether they've been college coaches or some of them have just been NFL quarterback coaches, have never been a coordinator.
Right.
But, other than the hire that Houston had a couple of years ago, no African-American coach is getting a chance to be a head coach without being a coordinator. That ain't happening.
Right.
And so here this guy is vaulted to a NFL head coaching job after 2 winning seasons at Baylor. And for me, he was overmatched from the beginning. He should have never received that job. But obviously there was some type of friendship tie there with the general manager that elevated him to that position. And the NFL game and the college game are 2 different games. And so what we saw was 5-11, 5-12 and then starting out this year 1-4. And you can talk about what weapons he did or didn't have him happen, but at the end of the day, I think the team quit on him.
Oh, absolutely. And he was 11-28 in the 3 seasons. And he had he was 1-27 when the opposing team scored 17 points or more. Now, this ain't saying 27 points like Kansas City or something. This is 2 touchdowns and 1 field goal. When you scored 17 points against the Carolina Panthers, that you more than likely was going to win. So that means this offensive guru that supposedly dominated in college did not get his offensive team prepared enough to score more than 17 points for anything. So I totally agree with what you're saying. How many coaches in the last, let's say the last 40 years, since 1980, there is roughly, and maybe see if you disagree with me, there has only been 2 coaches that were in the college rankings that moved up to the NFL rankings that succeeded. Jimmy Johnson,
Right.
Pete Carroll.
Yes.
But Pete Carroll did have some NFL. But
Right.
Jimmy Johnson was the only one mainly that went from college to pros and succeeded. You have a lot of coaches that came from college to pros and never succeeded. You know, I mean, and Jimmy Johnson hasn't coached in what, 25 years?
Almost. Yeah.
Almost 30 years. So the thing of it is, as you were saying, the buddy system, you had a general manager that, liked this guy, he's my buddy, so I'm going to bring him up. And look what Carolina is going through. They're going through a dismal franchise. I mean, they don't have a good quarterback, though I guess they can get a chance to draft one this year because they will be in the top 5. So,
yeah,
but
it's difficult to make that transition. I'll go all the way back now. One who did have some success was Dick Vermeil. Dick Vermeil was a college coach at UCLA, went to the NFL, struggled a little bit with the Eagles, then got them to a Super Bowl, burnt out, went away for a while to broadcasting, came back. We saw what Jimmy did, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy went to Dallas, goes 1-15, all the way to back-to-back Super Bowl championships. But look at some of the other guys who've been really, really good in college and didn't have good NFL careers. Steve Spurrier, right?
Yep.
Dominant level college coach, didn't have the success. Pete Carroll had to leave the NFL, go to college, and then come back to have the success that he's been able to have in making that transition. Now, we've had guys that have been what I call college assistants that had NFL pedigrees and then wind up back in the NFL with somebody. And so they've had that success. But most of your NFL successful, long-term successful guys were guys that started in the NFL, cut their teeth, maybe went to college for a few years and then came back, to do that. And so it's a different game. You're navigating a different set of egos. You can control the narrative at the college level. I mean, look at Nick Saban. We would call Nick Saban one of the most successful coaches that there is, but the NFL wasn't kind to him. And so he had some success as a coordinator, but as a head coach, it was a lot different for him. And so you really do have to spend time, pay your dues, and that was really my thing, is that there are a lot of guys who've paid a lot of dues at the NFL level that got passed over on that, not just the minority candidates, but how does Bieniemy not wind up with that job, or Leftwich that's leading Tampa, and then some of the other guys that have been really good on the defensive side of the ball just didn't get that opportunity. I even go back to a guy like Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell was a longtime NFL assistant, gets there. Detroit actually had winning records, 3 of the 5 years that he was there, and then all of a sudden, boom, he was out.
Right.
And so college success at the end of the day does not equal NFL success.
Exactly. So, saying that, and in a few minutes we're going to do our favorite our segment of the show, but right now, which team after 5 weeks has been the most disappointing team?
I'm going to say Denver. Denver's been the most disappointing team. There was a lot of expectations. Many people thought that they were a quarterback away from being a serious playoff contender. They had made some investments at wide receiver, at running back. The defense was pretty solid last year, and you felt like they'd add some keys. I thought it was going to be difficult for them in the AFC because I thought in the AFC West because I thought they're not better than the Chiefs. They're not better than the Chargers, and I thought realistically they're not better than the Raiders. But they thought Russell Wilson still had a lot more left in the tank. And the disappointment is even though you look at their record is not as bad as they've looked. They've looked terrible. They've looked overmatched. He's looked old. And so what are you going to do there? Their 2-3 could easily be 0-5. And so to me, they have been the biggest disappointment of the season.
Absolutely. So now, our favorite subject.
Are you going to ask me who's been the biggest surprise?
Oh, who is the biggest surprise?
The Giants.
Well, that's true.
The G-Men.
Yeah.
They're 4-1.
Yeah. And you brought in Brian Dable, Buffalo offensive coordinator, and they have been very impressive. We both picked Green Bay last week to beat the Giants, and for a half it looked like that was going to happen, but the Giants have really played well. And here's the thing: Brian Dable was an offensive coordinator, but it's been the defense and running, which has been what used to work in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You know, that's how Dallas won their championships, was with great defense and a great running attack, you know, with good wide receivers. So, but that's how he's been doing it. And
yeah, having Saquon back and a healthy Saquon, right?
Right.
He was back last year, but you can see the explosion is back in him, the ability to do the jump cut, all those things, and he keeps Danny Dimes from turning it over. If you put it in Saquon's hands, Danny Dimes is not turning it over.
And he looks like a decent quarterback. So, but but here's the thing, though. One quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Is he worth signing the second contract?
No.
So, see, he is in his last? I'm trying to remember if he's in his last year or next year is his last year.
Next year.
Okay, so he's in the what they call the 5th-year contract. So, right. So after that, you know, and you've already heard rumors, Buffalo, other teams that are wanting to trade for him, you know, to boost their running game. So, but I totally agree with you there. I think it's a great story that he is playing well because he had been his availability or his ability was unavailability. So, but I totally agree with you. But
unfortunately right now you can't overpay at running back.
No.
So, but I don't think he'll be the guy that gets traded this year. I think the guy who's going to get traded is going to be McCaffrey. If I'm Carolina, I'm shopping him, not because of his non-productivity, but the draft picks that they need to get that franchise turned around. He's the guy.
Oh yeah, they got it.
And so Buffalo with McCaffrey I'm telling you right now, would make them very, very scary.
Yeah, it would even put them well ahead of the Chiefs.
Right.
So,
and so if I was the Chiefs, I'd trade every running back I had for Christian McCaffrey.
I would too. So
And
definitely
trade them and my backup quarterback for Saquon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So Buffalo won't get them. So,
Right.
so yeah. So now we are at our favorite segment of our show, Penny for Your Thoughts.
As we know, last week we talked about this being a great part of the sports calendar with NFL football, playoff baseball, but we also have preseason basketball. And with that, this year is going to be a historic year. LeBron James is about 300 points behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to be the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. I want to take time for me to publicly recognize the greatness of LeBron James. There's always arguments about who's greater, him or Jordan or whatever. Regardless, he's great in his own right. The decision happened over a decade ago. People let that go. And I want us to be able to truly enjoy the greatness that we see in this young man, not only as a basketball player, but as a young man and what he's done for his hometown community of Cleveland and Akron, and how many kids that he's sent to college through his school that he built, and how he's been a role model for his children. And he's never been in trouble. He married his high school sweetheart, and I've never seen a historically great athlete take as much criticism as he did. I think he's one of two athletes that have had pre-professional status and lived up to it. He and Tiger Woods. For me, Michael Jordan exceeded what we thought he was going to be. We thought he was going to be a really good player. We didn't know he was going to be the greatest player of all time. But think about this. LeBron James is going to wind up with more points than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and more assists than Magic Johnson. And when he's done, he may wind up being the only guy ever, when we talk about just greatness and longevity, and he ain't hanging on right now. He's going to be top 10 in scoring, top 10 in assists, and has an outside chance of being top 10 all-time in rebounds. All I'm saying is, while we have a chance to see this Halley's Comet of a basketball player, titles withstanding, Jordan withstanding, let's just celebrate this elite level athlete and an elite level human being in LeBron James.
I totally agree with you. And that is a great ending to a great show that we had. So, anyway, so tonight, real quick, Chicago, Washington.
Chicago at home.
Chicago at home, too. I totally agree. And so, with that, we had an amazing show. Any given Sunday. George Walker behind the scenes, taking care of all of our phone calls that we getting and everything. So, with Coach 24, Darwin Penny, and myself, Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice, be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a great football weekend.